Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be looking into Morgott and the Any Glitchless Speedrun with the Bloodhound's Fang. It's something I get asked a lot, is how I'm able to read his openers and punish him accordingly. And today we're going to be doing exactly that. We're just going to be examining a couple of different openers, and I'm going to be giving my insight on how you can possibly read them yourself and apply the knowledge that I've learned over hours and hours of practice. So let's get into the video. Thank you all for being here. So for the levels for this fight, you're going to want 25 strength and 32 dexterity. That is of course going to be amplified with the Radigan Sourceal, which will bring you up to 30 strength and 37 dexterity. And you're also going to want Golden Vow and a Bleed Grease for this fight. First, we're going to be looking at the Somersault opener, which is in my eyes the easiest one to punish. With all openers on Morgott, you want to start with the jumping R1 attack, and then afterwards read what he does. As you can see here, he does like a little cartwheel into a somersault. As soon as he lands from the somersault, you can go ahead and do a weapon R1, and afterwards, when he jumps into the air with two swords, you can just roll to the right side of his body. And also, another rule of thumb for all of the openers, if you do two weapon art attacks on him, he will always do the Swords of Revealing Light, where he'll like channel swords up into the air and call them all down. So you want to use this to your advantage, because this kind of is how the openers become scripted. We'll play that back again for you guys in slow motion. So you want to start with a jumping R1 attack, and then you want to read the opener, which is going to be the cartwheel into somersault. As soon as he lands, you're going to want to do a weapon R1, and then you want to roll to the right side of his body as he's jumping into the air. And when he lands, you want to do another weapon R1 into a weapon R2, because you know that he's going to do the Swords of Revealing Light attack. And from this point, the next weapon art you'll do will like stagger him. So what I like to do here is I like to like regen a little bit of stamina before I go for the actual weapon art, and that'll just allow me to continue the fight a little bit easier. Once he's staggered, you're going to want to go for the riposte here. Notice how I drink my flask. It's just for safety, because after this you want to do another weapon art combo, and you want to be able to tank a hit in case he does an attack that you don't want. After the riposte, the fight's pretty much scripted, as long as the attack that staggered him was the attack that bled him and not the actual riposte. You're going to want to take a couple steps to the right here and do a weapon art 1 into a weapon art 2. Normally he would go in a second phase, but if you're able to hit him soon enough before he gets up, he won't actually transform into second phase. So you're going to want to do exactly that, and you're going to want to, phase him with the weapon art follow-up and not the weapon art 1. One more rule of thumb here, I like to call this the count to 4 phase of the fight. After the riposte, you want to count to 4 with weapon art combos, because that's generally what's going to bleed him if, like I said before, the weapon art combo that staggered him in the first place is the one that bled him and not the riposte. And that's it for the first opener, and it does sound like it's a lot of information at once, but I had to preface a couple of rules of thumb first. We're definitely not going to be explaining too in-depth on the other openers. It is kind of self-explanatory from this point. Now that we're done with the first opener and going through it in slow motion, we're just going to play it again at full speed. This next opener is called Knife into Jump, and it's a little bit unlucky. You're going to have to practice this one. It requires a little bit of freestyling and knowledge of the other follow-ups that he can do out of this opener. The reason I chose this example is because you can see right afterwards he does the somersault, and it actually plays the exact same way afterwards. It's just the Knife into Jump is kind of like the initial opener this time instead of the backflip. We're not going to spend too long on this one because we just learned the somersault opener. I'm going to show you guys some more examples of more complicated openers. This next opener is going to be called the dagger opener because he's going to open with two little dagger swipes into his hammer. This one is going to require a little bit of explaining and a little bit of practice, so please bear with me. There's two things to note here. First off, when he's done swinging his hammer after the opener, I kind of delay my L2 input a little bit. That's because there's two things he can do out of this, and I want to make sure that I can deal with both of them. What you're seeing here is the hammer follow-up afterwards. He doesn't always do this, but if you delay your L2 input there, you actually have enough time to actually delay your follow-up input as well. And if you do it at the right time, you can actually iframe the hammer attack. Also conveniently, you get placed on his left side of his body, and if this happens, he'll most likely follow up with that jump attack that we saw in the somersault opener earlier. So from this point, the fight's pretty much scripted, because you can get 2 more weapon arts into a stagger, and you know the deal. Instead of the hammer follow-up, he'll most of the time do this attack with his sword, and the way to deal with that is to time your L2 input here till when he's just about to swing his sword. That way, as you're flying backwards, you're going to tank the hit with the hyper armor frames. At this point, you've already done 1 weapon art attack and a jump R1, so actually you only need 3 more weapon art attacks to stagger him. Once you roll the light blade and run behind him, you just do 2 weapon arts, and then the 3rd one will stagger. And now that you've staggered him, the fight's just like every other opener where you just count to 4 after the riposte. This next opener is one of the hardest to deal with, and I'm just going to call it the jump opener. It's kind of unlucky to get. You're going to need to practice this one a lot. After he jumps away from me, I throw Kukri at him. This is because poise works on a timer in this game, and Morgott essentially has 6 seconds before he starts regenning his poise. You could also argue that throwing this Kukri here can activate Morgott's input reading, and this is what causes him to chase me down here. I'm not 100% certain if that's the case, but I just like doing it anyway. If he goes for this advancing slash, pay attention to what I do right here. I roll the attack, and then I run in front of him and stop for a split second, then run behind him again when I see him going for his sword follow-up. The goal here is to iframe the incoming hammer attack, so you want to do the weapon art and then just hold for a split second, and then once you know he's about to swing, then you can press R2. It's important to note that out of this hammer follow-up, he can still attack, so don't spam your weapon art right away, assuming that he's going to do swords. As you can see here, he doesn't do them. You have to wait until he's finished with the entire combo, and then he'll do swords afterwards if his damage threshold is correct. And you guys already know the drill. From here, it's pretty much over, now that you've gotten the stagger and the bleed proc. Now time for the rarest, but also the worst opener, the instant hammer. This one requires a lot of practice because you need to have knowledge of every single other opener and every single follow-up he can do. Start with a jump R1 as always, then you need to roll the hammer attack in order to punish him afterwards. From here it's pretty much just a coin flip depending on what attacks you get. I get a couple of sword attacks here, then he actually does the somersault into the knife into jump, so I actually know how to punish this one from earlier. Pay attention to how I punish this sequence that he does here. He does the double knife swipe, and so I do a super early weapon art here. I end up tanking one of the knives here, but that's okay because he does the hammer follow-up afterwards, and again I do a super early weapon art combo to avoid the sword attack that's incoming after the hammer. The goal here is to trade with him and get hit by the light blade, then try to go behind him, and watch what I do here. Now I made a small mistake here. I didn't fly backwards with the weapon art into his riposte box because I didn't think it was going to stagger, but looking at his health and the poise meter, it most definitely is going to stagger, so I should have done that in order to fit into heal before taking the riposte. Here in the fight a little bit differently because his health is so low. Instead of doing 2 weapon arts here, I just do 1 R1 and then a weapon art 1. And that's pretty much it. That's all of the openers that I know of at least and how to punish them. Hope you all enjoyed the video today. I really appreciate your support. Like and subscribe if you want to see more guides like this, and thank you all for watching. Catch you later.